Hey guys, Lenny Reed, Dynomite Diesel Products. Sorry it's been such a long time since the last time we spoke to you guys in the internet land, but it's been pretty crazy around here. With everybody, first off, it's not my favorite time on the planet, but it kind of is my favorite time because we've always tried to make as much horsepower as required for whatever job that we're doing or whatever customer we're trying to service. But my thought process has always been to do it as smoke-free as possible. And the reason for that is because if you're seeing black smoke going out the tailpipe, that means you have unburnt combustion processes not happening in the cylinder where they're supposed to. So I know that I pick on black smoke a lot, and that's because like we get a political black eye over it. But now that fuel is up over $4 a gallon again, you should be able to appreciate this. Basically, if you can save yourself any sort of money to go do other fun stuff, then I feel like that's a win. Whether your fun stuff is jumping on airplanes, which mine is not, but you know, kudos to you, my hat is off. Or just towing your camp trailer for the weekend with your kids and their bicycles, or going fishing. You know, every time we tow, we drop down to 8-9 miles to the gallon pretty regularly. Now, let's assume that you're doing 9 miles a gallon. Let's say that you travel 12,000 miles a year, about 1,000 miles a month. That's pretty average, I'd say. That's going to put you at like 1,333 gallons per year if you're always at 9 miles a gallon. If we was to do math on that at $1.87, which is exactly what fuel used to be here about 6 months ago, we'd be $2,493 per year in fuel expenses, let alone tires, insurance, truck payment, all the other things. Now, if we did the exact same thing, but we do it this year, and I've already seen fuel for as much as $4.24 per gallon, US gallon, not imperial, but US. So Canadian guys, you're gonna figure it out yourselves. I don't know, but I can't even figure out how to say imperial correctly. Anyways, so at 424 times 1,333 gallons, we end up with $5,653 just in fuel costs. That's no fuel filter, that's no fuel additive, that's no insurance, that's no truck payment. You just spent almost $6,000 on fuel that year. So if we can give you a mile or 2 miles per gallon, then you're going to save money to have more money to go do other fun stuff. Example, motorcycles. Example, mountain bikes. Example, boat. Anything fun. Do it with your family, go make some memories, enjoy the time. But we've always tried to make it as smoke-free so we could put as much fun back in the fuel tank as possible. And now that we're over $4 a gallon, I think it's pretty important. A couple of ways that we can make fuel economy. One is, as the piston's coming up, the exhaust valve is going to be opened by the camshaft very soon. And all of our combustion process needs to be done and burnt before the exhaust valve opens, otherwise, poof, we lose some of the energy out the exhaust valve, through the turbine housing, and then down the exhaust pipe. If we're seeing black smoke, you're basically spending fuel. Whole configuration, whole orientation, whole shape, whole size. Now that we've got the ability to move holes in tenths of a thousandths of an inch, we've been studying a lot on 5 and 6 hole and 6 and 7 hole. And basically, what I can say in a brief moment is the more holes you have, the shorter the distance traveled before it ignites. So if you've got a very large bore with a very large bowl, then you're going to want lesser holes so you can get the fuel to travel to the outside circumference of that bowl and use as much oxygen as possible in the combustion chamber, i.e. the bowl. If you've got a very small bowl at lower RPM, then you can get away with a lot more holes for finer atomization. You're still going to use a bunch of the oxygen that's in the chamber because the chamber is so much smaller in diameter, and you don't end up wasting a bunch of fuel at the tailpipe and smoke because it's atomizing so much better. So everybody's asking us now, like, do I want 10 hole, do I want 14 hole, do I want 78 hole, do I want 3 hole? All I can tell you is we're making them as good as we can make them for your application every single day. Not everybody's application is always the exact same. Just because we have two guys call up with, say, VP44 trucks, the only thing we really know is the truck's going to be done fueling by about 3,200 RPM. So everything outside of that, your turbocharger size, what you're doing with the truck, all of that stuff is totally different, and the elevation's a big deal as well. So we're always going to try and provide you with the proper hole count with the proper size. And if we're going to go back to like talking in thousandths of an inch, which I absolutely hate, it's disgusting. If we move something by even a half a thousandth of an inch, we can find drastic decreases or drastic improvements in performance and all around drivability and usability. So just because we're going with a bigger injector nozzle doesn't make it more powerful. Oftentimes we get into the part where we're giving it so much fuel, there's not enough air that it starts to quench the flame, and if you quench the flame down too much, you start to lose power, and you're spending a bunch of your cash out the tailpipe in black smoke. So I hate to keep beating on the black smoke thing, but it's not, I mean, air-fuel ratio is a big deal, and now that we're measuring and monitoring air-fuel ratios, I'm finding that the proper hole size, proper hole count, proper orientation, angle has a lot to do with it, but nozzle protrusion through the cylinder head has just as much to do with it. So I've had some really good conversations with really smart guys, and there's a lot going on. There's just, and now that we have the tool in-house, now that we just got another dyno picked up, we've got another extrude hone showing up. The new extrude hone, it's going to use more of a, almost like a paint thinner type viscosity material. So when we're modifying the really small holes down at like 3.5, 4 thousandths, this almost a water-based material is going to be able to flow through those, and it's going to change the characteristics of flow, and it's going to shape and give them K-factor. In the past, using extrude hone, with extrude hone, it's more of a pasty kind of a compound, almost like children's silly putty. And it works great from like, say, 6 or 7 thousandths up. But when you get to the really small holes, which we're now having to use with all the later emission style trucks, those small holes just don't pass the extrude hone media very well. So that's also why we're doing this new AFM machine, which was certainly very expensive, but it's certainly the way of the future. And if you don't have it, then you're not going to be in the future. That's all there is to that. So lots of tools coming in. We got the new dyno shot being built. Matt, camera guy, and I, we've been extremely busy just studying, testing. Most of you know that I've got a 2019 dually high output with an Eisen. We were extremely confident we were going to take that thing to testing, and apparently EPA has changed a few small details on us. So that truck, if we take that truck to emissions testing and it passes, we get a carb number for that truck, a 2019 Ram 3500 with an Eisen tranny and a high output. That's the bang for your buck, because each one of those EO numbers is going to cost us about 20 grand. The bang for your buck is very low on that. So via their recommendations, they're now giving us the ability to go get a standard output 2019 truck, which they give us an emissions code. That emissions code is very specific to that exact truck, that exact application. But when you can fix the one emissions code, it branches out into a tree. And because of this one emissions code, which we were lucky enough to find, when we get this one done, it's a standard output 2019. This will give us EO and carb numbers from 2015 clear out to 2020, possibly 2020-21. So I say possibly because right now the EPA is studying that truck more for future. So it's not a guarantee that it's going to be clear out to 2021, but I can promise you this, they've already given us the guarantee that it will work from 2015 to 2020 based off the one emissions number that we were able to find. So right now in this parking lot, we've got two 2019 trucks. I'm extremely confident in the application that we've built for the high output trucks. The truck rips. I mean, with an Eisen tranny, the thing makes 430 horsepower to the rear tire, gets fantastic fuel economy. It uses a lot less diesel exhaust fluid than it used to as stock. The truck's got 80,000 miles on it. It's never blown up a CP4. We've never had any real issues with some of the injectors that we tested. There's probably been 15 sets in that truck. With some of the injectors, we're goofing up the DPF quite often. And once we finally got the correct injector in the truck, along with this stuff, believe in it, it actually works. When you add cetane, you keep the diesel particulate filter alive a lot longer. So this stuff works. This is 8 points of cetane for every 30 gallons of diesel. And it is legit. If you're having to do like forced regens with your truck, run this stuff very, very often, and that will decrease the need for you to do forced regens. So if you can't get out on the freeway and you can't open it up and you can't make some heat, add cetane. It works. Now, the 2019 truck, we were super stoked about taking that thing down and having it tested, but when they told us it was only going to be good for the one truck, math just doesn't pencil that out. So now 2 years ago when we bought the truck, they thought that it would cover 3 or 4 or 5 different trucks, which to me was a decent bang for the buck. But now that they're only going to give me an EO number for the one, like that just doesn't pencil. So we've already found another 2019. It is a long bed 2500. It has the proper emissions number on it, and when we get this one figured out, the emissions number will cover again 2015 all the way to 2020, high output and standard output. So for whatever transmission configuration you have in all those years, we will have a carb and or EO number for you, hopefully within the next like 4 to 6 months. One thing I will say is with the 2019 trucks, we can't just give you a set of injectors and let you fly anymore. There are torque limiters built into the ECU. So now you're going to get like an auto cal with your injectors, and the auto cal is basically going to be to readjust or reset some of those torque limiters. We put a great big injector in it. Factory, my 2019 truck would get to about 1760 microseconds of injector on time. And it would get to that torque limiter that the ECM was set and programmed to. We put a bigger injector in it, and all it did was get to the torque limiter earlier, and it would cut itself off at 1200 microseconds instead of 1700 microseconds. So we played with all sorts of different injectors thinking we were going to get to a sweet spot and kind of trick that. Well, we discovered that's not a possibility. So we had to partner up and we had to start building a file that basically the only thing we're adjusting is just the torque limiters in the ECU, so we can allow the truck to make some more horsepower using the injector. But that being said, injector on time with the injectors that are in the truck right now is about 1,500 microseconds, and it seems to be an extremely effective shot. Exhaust gas temperature is awesome. Diesel, the truck will go about 1,000 miles between regens, and if you're like, just say I leave Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I'm going to drive to Missoula and then to Missouri and then Indiana, as long as that truck's got a load behind it, the diesel exhaust filter won't fill up at all. It won't go to 20%, it won't go to 40%, it won't go into regen. It'll regen because of math. It knows that it needs to regen about every 1,000 miles, but when you look at the dash gauge, it'll still be reading 0 as it goes into a regen, and the regens are super short. So we're super stoked about the way that turned out, and I'm really hoping that with the 2019 standard output truck that I've got right now, I'm hoping we can find the exact same results with that. I will say, with DPF and EGR system on the truck, I've never had the EGR off the truck. I've never had to clean the EGR. I've never had to service the EGR. About the only thing that I've done was just driven it like it was meant to be driven, which is, you know, I drive it around town. I tow a lot with it. I use this very, very frequently. Whenever I take a road trip, I will pour a bottle of this in basically at every time that I fuel stop. And the reason for that's because with 8 points of extra cetane every single time that I stop and fill the truck up, I mean, it's got a 52 or 53 gallon tank in it, I think. So I'm diluting it down. So let's just say I'm giving it 5 or 6 or 7 points of cetane, but that is still allowing me to A, keep the DPF cleaner, and B, I can tell in 2 tanks of fuel, if I don't add this stuff, I will drop by 1.5 miles per gallon when towing, and if I'm empty, it'll drop by about 1 mile per gallon if I'm just empty and driving around without this stuff in the tank. Idle quality, startability, drivability coming off a stop sign or a stoplight, everything is better with more cetane, and I can't say that I've ever driven a 12 valve or a 24 valve like ISB truck or anything pre-DPF and noticed by putting a fuel additive, the thing seemed to run better. But with this later high pressure injection system stuff, with DPF and DGR still on it, notable drivability difference. One thing that I will say is every single time we sent this stuff out for blind testing to all sorts of people, and everybody was like, wow, my truck's smoother, my truck's quieter. Everybody said that with all their trucks. So I do believe in the chemicals, really good stuff. So that was a little bit about the injector protector. Let's talk about 2019 stuff. Did that check. It's Friday. And now I'm going to grab my camp trailer and I'm going to go camp with all my buddies and have a good weekend. So I hope you guys do the same. Take care. Lenny Reed, Dynomite Products. Thanks.